Blues Vodcast. Today we will be talking about how to analyse poetry. Joining me in this helpful guide to success are Keone D'Souza and Shazon Mia.
Hello! Hello.
So, to start off, we shall talk about form. So, Keone, what should we look for in the form of a poem?
Well, first of all, look at how the poem looks on the sheet. If it follows a regular structure that repeats itself, it's just generic. But if it is a specific type of poem, like a sonnet for example, it will be different. In this case, a poem with 14 lines and usually 10 syllables per line. If you look at Flag as an example, you can see that it has 5 stanzas, each with 3 lines. The middle line of each stanza is shorter than the other two. The form therefore mimics the shape of an old medieval flag. This is something you can comment upon, which will gain you a good amount of marks.
Thank you for that. So, just to sum it up, look at the general structure of the poem on the paper and how it looks. It can relate to something. Then, after looking at the form of the poem, we can look at the structure. So, Shazon, what can you tell us about how to help analyse a poem?
Okay, so when looking at analysing a poem, you can also look at the structure. This is how the poem is written and what its context is. So if we look at Flag, we can see that the poem is built around the conversation between two voices. In the poem, the first line of each stanza is a question, childlike questions, which are answered in 2 lines, yet another way which you can gain those valuable marks.
Thank you, Shazon. So let's look at our PowerPoint slide to sum it up for you. So once again, we see that we look at the structure of the poem, we look at how it is written, and if we can see a correlation in it. So now we will comment upon language. So Keone, what do you think we should do to gain those marks in language?
In language, you should focus on the sound of the poem. This is looking at how the words create sounds when spoken or read. This can be complementary to the structure and form of the poem itself. So if we look at Flag again, then we can see how Agard uses rise and fall from the question and answers as a sound right at the beginning of the poem to work really well.
Well, that is very good, thank you. So as we heard, all we have to do is look at how the words create sound of a poem. Okay, now we move on to imagery. So, Shazon, please tell us how we can analyse the poem in terms of imagery.
Okay, well, looking for imagery looks at the words and think of what they made you think of. This is what you can mention as what the author makes the reader think of and how it affects it. Again in Flag, it contrasts positive poetic language with harsh and heavy words, so fluttering and breeze, or rising or flying and field, are always brought down to earth with very ordinary dull repeated cloth. It always requires is just reading it through and having it affect
Just keep going.
as the author intend or down to your interpretations.
Thank you very much for that detailed explanation. To summarise, we have to just interpret it in your own way and imagine the words and how they affect you. And that's all you have to do, just write that down. So, now, the last point that we can help with is attitudes, themes and ideas. Keone will explain this to us.
Yes, of course. This is a more in-depth analysis that asks you to read between the lines. This is a basis for what the poem is trying to get across and what it believes in. So Flag seems to be built on the idea that nationalism is a purely abstract idea, and the poem is therefore about the power of symbolism. This is a good analysis, but as everything should be, it should be backed up with quotes.
Thank you very much, Keone. So again, a summary will be shown you to help you. And as you can see, attitudes, themes and ideas is what the poem is putting forward as what it believes in. So, overall, make sure to always P in your answers and follow these easy steps to achieve a high grade in your work. Well, we hope it helps you in your revision, and I thank my guests tonight, Keone and Shazon. Now thank and goodbye.
Something you can comment upon, which will gain you some good amount of marks.
Thank you for that.
This is what you can mention as what the author makes the reader think of and how
Keep going, keep going, keep going!
how it affects it. Again in flag, it contrasts positive poetic language with harsh and heavy words, so fluttering and just reading it through and having its effect
Just keep going.
as the author intend or down to your intent.
La 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 la, walk out, walk out, la 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 la, la 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 la. Dun 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 dun. Go.
So, welcome to one of the exclusive.
I don't think you're speaking loud enough.
No, but I was wondering, what did you want me to change?
Oh, welcome to this exclusive podcast. Are you recording?
Yeah.
Oh, we can do this on the outtakes at the end.
Okay.
Right, man, get up again and sit down.
Do I have
Yeah, come on.
to? Oh, just delete this one now.
No, this will be, no, stay. That's fine.
Conflict Poetry Crosswords. Do 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 do.